Hi, my name is Alexander Diraviam, and I'm the CEO and founder of MOCBoxing, which is the one-stop LEGO aftermarket shop. And throughout this video, I'll be discussing a little bit about BCEx, the PNG Promised Neighborhoods grant that they provide, that basically fueled the course I just took with them, as well as what my company does. So just a quick background on me and the company. I'm from Cooper City, Florida, and I've spent most of my life here, and that's also how I got involved with Broward College and the BCEx program, which is Broward College Entrepreneurship Experience. And they are a phenomenal program, and I will be plugging that from the beginning to the end of this. But in order to build this company, I went through um, their ideation phase and accelerator and launch. And I also did a few weeks of the Financial Wellness Institute, and now I've just finished the Small Business Bootcamp. Um, but especially in the accelerator, I started doing interviews, and that's where I wound up with these roughly 230 interviews conducted on customers and potential clients, and just other people in my industry to understand exactly what I needed to build. And then throughout this, I've also been building my LinkedIn contacts. So that's how I've got these roughly 4,300. And I launched the company about a month and a half ago, roughly 2 months. And since then, I've gotten 9 sales, totaling roughly $600 in revenue. So, fun fact about me, I am a former mechanical engineer. That's what I did my undergrad degree in, and I did a minor in entrepreneurship. Although I do have to say, like, I think Broward College has spurred me so much further in my entrepreneurial career than my minor did. Um, I briefly worked in Germany as a computational linguist, and I have also formally founded another company called Vasari Design, which you may have seen on the first slide. And that's really the parent company for MOCBoxing. But Vasari Design was a 3D printing company, and it turned into a bunch of automation software. And that's how I sort of arrived at this automation logistics solution that I'll be discussing. And I'm also a former Lego employee, so the marriage of automation and Lego was sort of the perfect thing to build this. So how did I hear about PNG? Well, I've been doing BCEx for like a year and a half. Um, and in that time, I've taken virtually everything that they tell me about. I'll go to as many events as I can. But yeah, we primarily hear about it through emails. And when I first heard about BCEx, it was through my mom, who's a Broward College professor. So I was motivated to take this because I got a ton of information out of everything else that BC had offered. And I was like, okay, anything that they output is going to be pretty high quality. It should be for me. The other thing was that one key piece of knowledge I was missing was how to market. And I will say that's something I still sort of struggle with, and this course could be longer or tap into that more. But I didn't really know how to sell the thing I had built when I got into their program. I knew that I had built a good product. I knew that I had formed good relationships with other people in the field, but actually getting this in their hands has been an issue. So the name of my business is MOCBoxing. Um, it is at its core was supposed to be sort of a Lego aftermarket logistics service. And originally, I wanted to take custom Lego sets called MOCs or my own creation, so MOC, and box them like they were official Lego sets so that you could see a custom Lego set right on the store shelf next to an official one. And it would be such high quality that you could make the choice based off of design quality rather than packaging and location and everything. So my business in a single sentence is that we take the difficulty out of buying any Lego type item on the aftermarket by um, by basically sourcing it from across the world under a single catalog instead of making you have to go through databases, go through a variety of stores, reorganize your cart. Now it's all in one place. And so we save you time and stress. So my why um, is sort of multi-part. Really, the end goal of my business, the reason I wanted to start a business in the first place was because I really, really care about poverty alleviation. Like my big three are poverty, education, and hunger. Um, and so I was like, I want to build a company that can build that can use its revenue to go do something good, to work on those three issues. Uh, but the reason for this sort of Lego related item specifically was it's some like I've built Legos for 20 something years. Um, and like it's sort of like a minor subject area of expertise. And so I was like, okay, let me take this thing that I love experimentation. So when I was doing my 3D printing company, I realized the most difficult part for people running 3D printing farms was not the design and everything. There's plenty of designers out there, but automation software, something that could like basically run this company while I sleep. So orders come in, the software I wrote reads the orders. It will then find who has the materials, or in the case of the 3D printing company, it'll prime the printer, uh, edit the design so that they can be basically printed sequentially, and then it'll package them. Or in the case of logistics company for Lego, um, it will put them all, or it will optimize the carts between stores from across the world and then ship them to you. So for me, it was like it's a stepping stone to solving these major issues. It was an automation software that I had already experimentally created, and it was a passion that I had for Legos, and this was sort of the right place to combine them, um, into something that didn't make me have to rebuild all these concepts. Like I'd done a lot of work, and I didn't want to waste it. So problem I'm solving is shopping Lego aftermarket is a complete pain. Um, I did some experiments on it, and like even for simple things, if you want to buy something by the part, like a custom set by the part, you have to go through 37 windows, um, just to actually check out to make sure that you've got all the right parts and all the right carts, um, and make sure everything's compatible, and you'll wind up paying a lot more in shipping than you would have thought at first. And so the idea here was just make it make it easier, you know? And for people who are unfamiliar with the aftermarket, being confronted at best with this marketplace, with Bricklink is the main marketplace people use right now. Um, if you were to go on there, it's sort of just this huge database of things, and you really need to like learn how to navigate it. But for the mother or grandmother or parent who's buying Christmas presents, they don't necessarily know how to operate that. And there's a lack of trust that goes with not knowing how to operate it. So I wanted to fix that. So my solution to this problem is logistics. I wanted to make it so not only could you get all those things that you were seeing on Bricklink much more easily, um, but that it was a stable price that you'd pay instead of having to pay based on the store you found it from, that you didn't have to worry about organizing it. You wanted 10 items? Fine. I'll figure out where those 10 items should come from for you. Not that you have to figure it out, organize and reorganize carts. And some of the interviews I did showed that people would spend months putting together their shopping carts. It's unreasonable. And no other shopping experience is like that. So this one shouldn't be either. Um, but yeah, and then in addition to that, it lets you get more things than you could get before. So right now the company sells retired Lego sets primarily, but there's sort of a track that I've built up in data I'm creating so that you can buy minifigures, you can buy things like just parts by themselves. I mean, so you can get a set by the part in which all of its inventory is split across several stores, and that winds up being cheaper most of the time. Um, also lets you get custom sets, design mosaics. So plenty of unique things that even if those functionalities exist on a handful of websites, none are as robust, none have as large of a catalog, and they are not all in one place. And that's something that I'm bringing uniquely to the market. So my customers sort of have a range. The one that I think might be best for where we are right now is the holiday shopper. They are people who don't necessarily have a strict budget. They don't, they're not strongly affected by the market economics within the Lego community. They are like desperate to make someone happy and view Legos, the usually their child or their adult child's desire to have certain Lego sets as paramount to having a healthy relationship with them. Um, just because they want to make them happy. But there are a handful of other parts. We've sort of got the nostalgic. The nostalgic is the person who buys because they couldn't get what they wanted as a kid, but now they have money in their pocket and they're looking for a place to spend it. You've got your like theme-based collectors. So those are people who like they have to have every single Marvel thing that ever comes out. So when there's Comic-Con exclusive Iron Man, released in 2011, hypothetically, um, they must have it. And even if there's only five of them in the world, they will do whatever it takes to get one. And so, I mean, those are the primary people. There's a handful of other types. At the end of the day, there's plenty of people that just build for fun, and I would like to tap into them eventually, but they're lukewarm buyers. The people I want right now are the early adopters, the people who are gung-ho, that are not married to any specific retailer, and they just need to get their hands on Legos, no matter what it costs. Um, and that they wouldn't, especially if they wouldn't have bought otherwise. I can make them buy because I've given them a better customer experience, and theoretically, they're also the same people that'll be coming back. So, value propositions, competitive advantage. Um, it's that we have the world's largest database of this. If you're buying at least, not the largest informational database, but the largest catalog of items to buy that are Lego related. Um, we also have like I don't think we have this automation software, so no one needs to be like fulfilling our orders manually, which means that things are basically done instantaneously. Instantaneously, like you check out and boom, it's split between all these stores. You'll get emails when each package is shipped, um, and it takes the difficulty out of it. It also is that you're paying a stable price. The price you see is the price you pay. It's not that, oh, surprise, you're paying $30 in shipping on a thing that's $5. Like, no, we've handled that all algorithmically. Um, well, and one more thing is that I've made this very modular. So right now it sources from 17,000 stores, but realistically, it is built like Legos. So you can replace any part in it if we need to accommodate new types of things that people want, if we want to scale it up to include other collectibles or manage small business inventories, all that's built into its core structure. It's very, very flexible. So this is the program that I just finished, is the Small Business Bootcamp taken through and funded by the Promise Neighborhood Grant. It's a fantastic program, 6 weeks, 3 hours a week. And as you can see down here, Dr. Lee was our instructor, and we had a different speaker or speakers each week to kind of talk us through certain things like how to register your business, how to find funding and investors for it. And it's the equivalent of several $1,000s. Every program I've taken at BC has been the equivalent of several $1,000s that they've paid for us. And I think really the best thing we can do is pay it back. Like, and you see it a lot in this program in BCEx, that everyone we've worked with will help everyone else out. They need you to show up to an event because it's a launch party. If people are looking for other contacts of like, how do I get to know someone in the business? Um, they might not know them, but I might. And so I'll send you that contact. I'll establish something. We'll get coffee, like figure out where we need to go. But it is just a fantastic program from beginning to end. So, real quick before we go further, I guess my company's social media is primarily on Facebook and Instagram, although we're on like LinkedIn, Reddit, Pinterest, YouTube. But the main ones that receive posts pretty much daily are Facebook and Instagram. And I highly recommend following both for Lego news and for anything if you want to like look for sales for just and just check out our catalog. And I personally would really appreciate it as a founder. So my general opinion of the SBB, the Small Business Bootcamp, is it is great. It's a fantastic source of information. Um, I think that it needs to be longer and more robust. So A, longer with more information. B, it needs to be split up sort of. There's a lot of topics covered, and there's sort of a mismatch between the level of information that comes with in my personal take, that comes with the lectures given by like Dr. Lee and the what do you call it? Like the workshop, the people who speak for the first hour of the course. Because in many ways they're speaking to two different levels of people starting a business. But I think it is a good transition into the accelerator. And we'll talk more about those in specifics later. But overall, the quality of knowledge was great, and it was something that I needed for sure to like kind of continue moving forward with my business. It has improved my sales rate at the very least. I started with got like one or two sales after I launched, and it's been a pretty dry month. But I at least changed a lot of the wording to sort of target a different type of customer, target like the holiday shopper, to target the people who are worn out by the buying process rather than the people who are looking for the best price. And it started to improve sales. Um, and in large part, that's just because the diagrams and stuff that they use to explain this course material are not in the other BCEx courses. So it helps you sort of rethink what you're doing. But at the end of the day, it is the nice thing I think is it's all sort of under a core philosophy of how do you build a business effectively without cutting corners, um, but also without wasting time and effort. So type of person that should take this is someone that's actually serious about business. Um, you can sit in on these classes. Like I think ideation is maybe best if you're on the fence about, oh, I'm wondering if starting a business is the right thing for me to do. Maybe I could work for someone else. Um, I would say by the time you've decided, you've moved past ideation, you really need to be married to the idea that you're going to build something, even if you're not sure what you're going to build yet, just because A, it's money out of Broward College's pocket, and B, it's going to take you work. So it's kind of pointless to sign up for a thing you don't want to work for if the ends are not going to justify the means. But yeah, I mean, if you are the type of person, it's gonna be great. You will find that all of these things pay as much into you as you put into them. So that brings us to who should not take this. Um, if you're just kind of chilling, if you're just like, oh, I want to gain some more passive knowledge, I will say I've read like a lot of entrepreneurship books, watched a lot of videos and stuff on this. Those do not do the same job that this does. And there are plenty of other entrepreneurship programs that I was hesitant to pay for because you never know really the quality. And I'm very glad this is free. But it's yeah, if you just want passive knowledge, this is not the place to get it. There will be homework, there will be things you have to do and learn. And like if you're not actively working on your business in between each class meeting, you're not getting anything out of this. So in that way, I'd say save the spot for someone else. That's not to discourage. I think literally anyone could do this. Like no matter how little entrepreneurship knowledge you have, no matter how unsure you are of the direction you want to take it, it's just that if you don't want it, the course is not going to make you want it anymore. You have to want it to get to the finish line. So I did adopt things from the lectures, um, and they were primarily like we talked about like pyramids and ladders of like how you organize what you offer. And the biggest thing for me was I was basically selling one thing to one type of customer, but the way they described it is you have sort of this pathway that you build for your customers, and at each step along that, different types of customers kind of jump onto that path and they all get to the finish line. But they can hop on and off, right? So maybe you've got like a very low budget customer. They're only going to be on for like the lowest thing that you offer. But even if you offer just like free information and then, people can go on and do more of your programs, those people then become a talking head for like, oh, I read this information here. And then maybe someone who has more money in their pocket is like, oh, that's a great recommendation. I'll check them out. And then they might go and grab something else. So for me, it was like, well, the first thing I was offering is just retired sets. You can find those virtually anywhere. Um, but I wanted to make it easier to get them. But then I started adding the buy the part option. And now the things that I offer on my website are cheaper than you can find them anywhere else in the world because they're algorithmically made to be cheaper. So, these are different ways of sort of processing your customers, but you always want them to go somewhere. You want your customers to be recurrent, and you don't want them to have been recurrent for like one type of product and then they're ready to move on to the next thing that you could theoretically offer them, and then you have nothing set up for them. And there's plenty of other things. That was the biggest one. It's like build a pathway for your customers to grow on. So I think this is an effective way to teach people. Uh, it's short-ish. Usually, I think there's a bit of a break. It's interesting. The speakers are engaging. I think though that it needs more activities, and we'll kind of discuss that later. But specifically, one that sticks out to me is we had a speaker that talks on how do you register your business. And for me, rather than talking about it in the stipulations, I wish someone had just shown me, hey, here, like I will create pretty much a fake business right now and do everything but pay for it. And this way you can see how it's done. Because there have been a handful of things, including starting a business, where I didn't realize how easy it was because it's like it's a big thing. You're about to get a tax ID, you're about to put your name under the state government. But it's really not a big deal. It's just that talking about it is the same thing that everyone else does. I want someone to show me how to do it. And I think, had I known how to do that earlier, I would have done it much faster. I waited pretty much like a year and a half before I registered my first business. The length of the boot camp, I think it should be longer. Uh, like the accelerator was my favorite course, hands down, and that was like 13 weeks in total. And it just gives you more time to grow with the information, to use it, and it really takes you from point A to point B. And that's not to say that the other courses don't. Like ideation, I think was 5 or 6 weeks, and that time you come out with a presentation. But as they'll say with the accelerator, um, presentation you come out of ideation with at the end of the entire course is like less than half of what you need for your first day presentation in the accelerator. And it's not impossible to do. It's just that the amount of transformation your business undergoes is very, very different than that course. And I do kind of feel like for the level of information offered here, there should be some comparative amount of coaching that goes along with it the whole way. Um, I think it met my expectations. It's sort of here and there, right? I didn't realize how good the instructor was going to be. So we had a phenomenal instructor that was above expectations. I I personally need help outside of class. Every instructor I've worked with, especially the ones that really take me to new places with my company or with my knowledge, there are people that I can work with outside of class, and we didn't really have that opportunity here. But I will say you have that with the other BCEx courses, so I would not ditch them by any means. But yeah, it was very like knowledge enriching. The biggest thing I wanted to get out of this though was learning how to market properly. And while this introduced me a little bit more to understanding my customers, it ultimately did not teach me, hey, here's how you get someone down the pipeline of like you have a product, you introduce it to them, you get them to go check it out, you get them to be a recurrent checking outer, and then you get them to put in a cart, check out, and then come back and be a customer again and get more people on board. That process was not taught here. And that's something I really, really, really think we all need because I noticed even with the other businesses that were started alongside me, they got the business part down. They're like all of the infrastructure and everything. Well, we don't have our sales. We need more sales. And some people are able to do it on their own, but most of that comes from their personal talent or their history prior to BCEx. I really think we need that knowledge here. Um, so level of information, this was pretty easy, like I just north of easy maybe. But uh I mean it challenges you if you have to figure it out. Like the hard part of all of these courses is applying it to your business. And they are very applicable, at least much more applicable than a lot of the other stuff I've seen. But the issue is figuring out, okay, I have, they talk about an avatar. I need my ideal customer. That's what an avatar is. And you sit down and you're like, okay, it's someone who buys this thing. But then you have to be like, okay, but why? And why them over someone else? Why not people who buy Knex who could be converted to Lego fans instead of people who already love Legos? And you can go down this rabbit hole forever. The hardest part at the end will be generating enough data and culling it to the best option because you only have a finite amount of time. And like you need to you need to be wise with it. And being wise with it is hard to do if you haven't built a business. And so that's going to be the hardest part of this class. The information itself is very easy to process, although some of the topics, like when the speakers are going, the workshop series, they are very specific to like, if you haven't started a business yet, this information is going to be useful. If you have already, it's not going to be as useful. So you can find yourself sort of zoning out at times. And I think maybe offering those separately would be a lot more helpful. even if it's just like a different day of the week or something. Uh, yeah, so at this point, I've talked quite a bit about it, but they can improve by just like fleshing it out. I think this might have been the first or second go at it, but really giving us a lot more of an opportunity to like contact the instructor outside the course and get his response and get his feedback. Because in every other BCEx course, we have that where you can meet with the professor one on one. I've gone out to lunch with many of them, and just learn like it's like going to office hours with your professor, right? You bring them your business and say, hey, here's what I've done. And they say, okay, great, now do this. I think you've gone in the wrong direction here. I think you've gone in the right direction here. And here's some contacts. But if you can't reach your professor, you miss out on that one-on-one learning opportunity. Uh yeah, and then length, homework, we need homework because as I'm sure many of us have learned in college, if they don't assign you work to do, you will not do work even though it's like, we've discussed this thing, theoretically, you should have done something with it by the time you come back. They don't say, do this, you wind up not doing it. And so it needs to happen. In the accelerator, we had homework. Towards the end of ideation, we had homework. And then in launch, your homework was customized to your business. I don't care what the format is, but we need work to do because that is a measurement and a merriment of commitment to the course and to actually getting out what you put in. Um, so I think it's actually appropriate for startups, entrepreneurs, and small business owners. Like if you are in a startup, it's still good for you to learn. And actually, the first day we had someone who was in that situation. But in yeah, as an entrepreneur, if you're just learning, go for it. Like all of these business models can be applied to anything. Like our professor is sort of a consultant for implementing AI based solutions into other organizations, and like he uses the same principles that I use to sell Legos online. And they're similar principles to what I use to design a 3D printer farm and to someone making a soap factory and to someone doing self-esteem courses. And these are all real things that have happened through BCEx. Um, so if it works for all of them, it probably works for a much wider sampling of people doing anything in business. And for me, right, at this point, I've been running small businesses for over 3 years. It's still helpful. Some of the information is not as useful as it would have been like a year or two ago when I was first starting, um, at least starting with this particular project. But uh, simply being there like gave me the opportunity to ask industry professionals questions that I wish I'd gotten to ask, but you simply can't easily find an answer for on Google. Like, how do certain tax IDs work? How do you get taxed? Those were big questions for me. But it might have you also asking, what types of bank accounts do I need? We had like bankers in there, so you could just ask them directly and they can direct you to resources. It's much better than just talking to the internet, in my personal take. Um, so the biggest thing that's helped me resolve was finding better customers and finding a pipeline. And we sort of talked about both those already. My favorite is Accelerator. I think that this is like, well, all of these have a final project, ideation, accelerator, launch, and the FWI Financial Wellness Institute. Um, I think this is the course that needs the most work because I've done the first three in full. The FWI, I've sat in on a course or two, or a class or two, but even seeing the results come out of there, people have these fantastic presentations. Clearly, they're like some of them, they're like full on lives have changed from the information they've learned here. I don't know that anyone had that particular experience here. I think we learned something, but I think it needs the level of love and care that these other courses have. Um, I think this should be offered very frequently, actually. Like if we could do it like 4 to 6 times a year, I think that'd be fantastic. A, because like I met people in the middle of this course that I was like that they were interested in business and I was like, oh, I want to fast track you onto something. But like ideation, the next one's offered in spring. So I don't want you to have to wait. I want you to like be able to jump on something and sort of start taming that entrepreneurial spirit and use it for something in the present. Uh, but yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have to be this course, even an intro course, like especially if ideation were offered first, I think that'd be most helpful. But there's just got to be something always running that people can join so that they're gaining the info that they need to get started, even if they're getting started pathways sort of different from other people's. So my three biggest takeaways are right here. The cheapest clients are the most demanding. Don't waste your time on people that ask for a million and one things. Uh, the I've seen this both in the engineering world and through here with my business and all. Um, but yeah, like so to speak, the rich clients, like they'll take your service or they'll find another one. Your clients with far less money are gonna be nickel and diming everything and want to get discounts, and they'll be looking for like you to have all these other features that you don't have. Like there was this business I was working with in England, and they sort of like they wanted all the a bunch of features that I had not built because that wasn't my business. Uh, and yeah, and like people who had like no investment in my actual success were telling me how to run my business, how to run my life. That was very frustrating. And it happens from time to time. When you interview 230 people, you were bound to get a few people who don't like what you do or who try and shoot you down a bit. Uh, but yeah, so it sort of told me like one of the things they mentioned many times is fire your customers, get rid of the ones you don't want. And as you, especially if you can grow your market large enough, you then eventually have a choice of who buys from you, of who you serve and who you don't. And they've even said, if you don't like your customers, send them to your competitor. You have no problem with them getting served, but you have a problem with them wasting your time. So don't let them waste your time. Uh, and this bandwagon thing that I keep describing, right? Have a pathway. Let them jump on. Let them choose. Don't try like if someone wants to buy your business version of your solution, like I'm building an enterprise version so that people who run conventions can get all the bricks they need to run their pop-up conventions. Um, don't try and get those people to buy your individual consumer-based Lego sets. They're not the right customer for that. And vice versa, right? If I've got this mother of three kids who wants to buy something for like a birthday or half birthday, right? Like my grandmother used to do, where we get half birthday presents when we were very young, so that we wouldn't get, all up in arms about the fact that our siblings were getting something. Then I'm not gonna try and sell her a 250,000 bricks for a weekend getaway. They're completely mismatched. Um, and there's more subtle things, right? Like if you know someone's a casual collector, don't sell them the thing that's for the big time collector, or sell to your customer's budget. Uh, and those were things that like are obvious now and maybe a little bit more obvious to me after working in sales. They were not obvious at first, and this course helped me realize that. And then another thing was like you have this ladder. The ladder begins at zero. You can have or sometimes below zero, right? Like your promotional materials, your business cards, your free samples, those cost you money and you give them away for free. So you lose money on those. But they're an investment. They get people to come back. They get people to have a magnet on their fridge that every time they stop by their fridge, they see it and they're like, oh, I need that thing. Um, and also like by offering free information, you're building your like trustworthiness in the field because you're the subject area expert, right? So when I talk about certain retired sets and there's virtually no one else talking about them, then I can become the subject area expert on them. And it means that when people have questions, they come to me and they ask them. The second thing is when yeah, and then you offer all these courses and stuff, and maybe the customer, the first time they see it, they're not ready to buy. But they sort of keep seeing your information. They keep learning from you, and then they're like, "Oh man, this information's good. Maybe their products are good too," and you get them to come back. So, in that way, like offering these free things gives you a monetary value. It's just built into the future, but having them functions as a marketing resource as well. I really like working with Dr. Lee. He is incredibly smart, and like his experience in the field, also his experience of having to like pick himself back up after life changes, like it helps us as entrepreneurs be like, okay, so even if I'm not in the place I want to be right now, it helps me realize like, oh, I can be. He did it, I can do it too. Uh, he's very good for asking questions, quite patient, because I'm the question asker in most classes, and some teachers don't tolerate that all that well. But yeah, and he like the nice thing is he's done all of this stuff that he's talking about, so he can actually coach you through it. Be like, hey, look at this diagram. I did this and it worked. Now you do it, and it'll work for you too. Um, I took the accelerator earlier this year. I think this course does a good job of preparing you. It does sort of cover some of the gaps, but I've said many times, it needs homework because there's homework in ideation, there's homework in the accelerator. If you expect there to be no homework in the accelerator, you will fail from day one. Like it is a lot of work. And so I think this sort of has to build up to that, but it needs to also cover more marketing information because even with a half-baked product, you can sell it. Um, and that's sort of what you have when you come out of ideation. But if you want to talk about your product, if you want to interview people, it helps a lot more to know how to do that by having sort of like a taste of it in this class. And it's also good because it lets you like register your LLC, learn how to like work with money. I needed to get a bank account when I started my business. Um, and just, this helps you answer topic specific questions that most businesses will need to have answered by the time they start solidifying what they do. So it is, I think this is a good stepping stone to get there. Uh, I like the mini workshop series, but I think it should be separated from this. Like this course to me is about sort of reevaluating your customers and your offerings to like match them up. And honestly, it kind of worked well as maybe a follow through after the accelerator into launch. Um, or I don't know, if you were to have broken up the accelerator into two pieces, this would be great in the middle. But it's sort of a topic that you need to learn alongside, right? Because one is like, what product should I make? The other thing is, how should I sell it? And this is that second part, and they need to be married together. If you are just sort of learning this in isolation, or all of these bits of information in isolation, it can be a problem, like to process it and incorporate it. So yeah, I mean the workshop series is good, but because they're only for a specific type of person, I would almost make them like a 6 week course in and of itself, and then make Dr. Lee's course a separate course. Because I think the goals of the two of them are different. And if they are aligned, if the two courses are taught at the same time, then it feels a little bit like they lack focus. Because they're sort of taking you in directions that are for different parts of your business's life cycle. Um, I think this did an okay job of exposing us to ways to get investment. Um, they did a good job of explaining like how do you get bank loans and stuff. And maybe honestly, that should be like a 3 hour lecture where you can ask a lot of questions because people have many of the same questions and you just don't usually get the opportunity to ask all of them. But we had an hour lecture that was on how do you like find banks, how do you organize your finances, what kind of loans are available, what kind of grants are available, what's the difference between like angel investors and your typical um like capital investors. But I would have loved in any of these courses if they had directly introduced us to investors. I've gotten to meet a handful of them because of the college degree that I did, but like if your business is going to be dependent on investment, pretty much the only opportunities investment related that this has introduced me to are like pitch competitions. And those are great if you're very competitive, um, or if you sort of had something set up. But if you just want to build a relationship, even with like a lower grade investor, that would be very helpful because then you use it as a stepping stone. You get some seed funding from them, and then you go out to some VCs or venture capitalists out in like Silicon Valley if you need to. But the point is that you start somewhere small. And right now, I don't think any of us in BCEx have an investor network. So that's something we need. This did help me increase my revenue. Like I said earlier, I had 2 sales when I did my beta test. Then I got like 1 to 2 sales on my own, but it wasn't until I started implementing some of the stuff from this that I started really seeing a spike in sales. Like the last like $500 all came within like a week and a half. So it was helpful. I but I need more schooling on it, and that's why I keep saying like we need to be able to meet with our professor outside of class because otherwise we're missing that chunk of information, missing that chunk of coaching where like even if you did the coursework, you don't have anyone to bounce it off of before you put your actual money into it and test it on the market. It did help me develop more sales channels. That's sort of the pathway thing I was talking about. So, um, and I think maybe the bigger issue was just matching customers with products. But yeah, so now you can get on because you can get onto my site mockboxing.com just because you're looking for retired sets or you're looking for a set for your kid. And then you're like, oh, I remember that my kids said that they wanted the Death Star and I know I can't find it anywhere, which is a common thing for Lego fans. Um, we have the Death Star. You buy that. And then you're like, man, I had a really good time shopping here last year. Let me tell my kid about it now that they're a little bit older. Your kid goes on, they're like, oh man, I want that Iron Man minifigure. I want that Spider-Man minifigure. I want to recreate the Avengers collection. But you don't have the money for 10 sets. So you just buy the minifigures and then we'll find them for you. Um, and then at that point, your kid tells their friends, and maybe a few years later, they're older and they're like, "Oh man, I really like building custom stuff. I would really love a custom London landscape for my shelf, my college dorm." Well, we can get that for you too, and you don't have to go through the hassle of buying all the individual parts. You don't have to find the manual and everything. You buy it here, we'll take care of everything. And then one day they go to a convention, they're like, "Wow, this is really disorganized. I bet it would be really helpful if the owners knew a way to like coordinate all their bricks." They go talk to the owner who happens to be like a childhood friend or whatever, and now they tell them about MOCBoxing and we're the supplier for them. So, but each person taps into that at a different point. And now every single thing that I've mentioned is its own sort of like product line. It's its own sales channel. So I think that's fantastic. And that was really helped to be developed by taking this course. It did not help me register my business with the state of Florida because I did that a year and a half ago, but I definitely think it would help someone. But at the end of the day, like I think that in particular, that is a subject that is best taught by seeing it done by someone else. Literally just like screen record, show you putting in all the information, even if it's dummy information, and then we all move on with our lives because it takes like 20 minutes to do, and yet we could talk about it for hours and hours and hours. You don't need to register an LLC. You can change it to an S corp or C corp if you need to. There's plenty of other things you can do, but for the average person, when you don't know exactly what your product is, just register the business name and call it a day. That's my take. I'm not a subject area expert, but I can tell you from what I've done, from the other people I've talked to, that is sort of how it goes down. The details matter later. They don't matter now, and you're not going to know the details until later, until you've started doing business. Um, I will like 11 out of 10 be enrolling in every single BCEx course I can. I love going to their events. They're great networking opportunities. In fact, I got to be a guest lecturer for an AI class just by meeting people at BCEx events. Um, and mind you, I just have a bachelor's, like, but these are great connections. Um, Everyone you meet here is helpful. They have information that's useful to you. You have information that's useful to them. You'll make friends. You'll learn things that'll be relevant for your entire life. Like business is something that I think, especially in the 2020s, is just becoming more and more part of our lives. And that's with or without hustle culture. Um, but it's just like the world is everything you do in life has some element of selling. Like, are you spending time with someone? Are you you know, yeah, spending time with someone, well, you're selling your time. You're selling your personality as something worth having. And ideally, it wouldn't be like that. But I do think that's how a lot of it is. And so if you're good at that, you can sort of buy people's time. You can sell your time uh, as a function of how you understand business, how you understand your value. And it makes you value yourself more too, because you understand what people are actually coming to you for. Why do people like spending time around you? Like for me, it's like, well, I know things about linguistics, mathematics, and I'm occasionally funny, you know. But the point being, there's a million and one benefits of this, and they're both life benefits and like business benefits and just career benefits. And you'll get to talk to other people in your field, so you can also learn things about your field without having to take courses in your field. Point is, take these classes. They're phenomenal. I can't recommend them enough. Um, so I think this is like pretty much the last question here, but the value proposition canvas is the single most important part of your business, I think. Um, for me, that was not the most important thing I got out of here. Or okay, I'll talk a little bit about this. For me, understanding the perfect customer and profit pyramid were really the most important part. The profit pyramid showing like, your enterprise buyers up at the top will pay ridiculous money for very highly customized and low supply solutions. So something that really only you can offer. And your people at the bottom are the ones that can go to Target, to Walmart, to Amazon to get the same thing you offer. And they want it their way, but they don't have the money for it. So you don't spend a ton of time on them. And then, the bulk of your customers are going to be in between. They're going to be buying things that like might be unique to you, or maybe they've just bought from you before. And so they like buying from you, but they could get those things elsewhere. And there's plenty of other reasons for that. But I had never sort of seen it expressed that way as like, here's how your customers stack up in terms of the money and the effort, or the money they'll spend, the effort of yours that they're worth, um, and the kinds of things they'll buy, and how you stack your like the things that you offer to match the population that's requesting them. And even like how you market to them, right? Like if you're doing an enterprise solution, that's not going to be just like a form on your website. Like you're going to cultivate a relationship with them. You're going to meet with your client and figure out what they want versus your like customers at the bottom of the barrel. You'll never, virtually never ever meet them. Um, they they'll probably just see your item and buy it more than likely because it's not a high dollar item, so they're not concerned with like finding the best cost on it. And if they are, they probably aren't your ideal customer. But yeah, so that's that part. But I think when it comes to actually building the business, it's the value proposition canvas and the business model canvas. Because value proposition canvas helps you marry like what is your customer looking for and what are you offering? And if those are out of alignment, you've got nothing to sell because you're going to be telling people to buy a thing they don't want. And I've been in that situation before. Sell to the wrong people, you will waste your money. Um, and then the business model canvas sort of the two go hand in hand, and we use both in the accelerator. That's why I say it was really important and still is the single most important thing for running a business, but it is not the most important thing I got out of this course. But the business model canvas talks about everything. It's who are your customers, who are your key partners, what are your key activities, um, how are you making money, how are you spending money, how like all these different parts. And it's fairly simple to use, but it can provide you years and years worth of depth into how you will be running your business from the past into the future. So even if you don't take any of these courses, learn how to use the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas because they will be immeasurably helpful to you. So that's everything. Lord knows how long this thing was. But I want to say thank you for MOCBoxing, the one-stop Lego aftermarket shop. And yeah, if you guys want to check us out, even if you want to contact me, you can go through our website and our the email form or whatever. Contact us on Facebook and Instagram. I'm happy to give out advice or shuffle them along through the BCEx programs. But by all means, take them. Go email Omar and Rudy and Josh and everyone else there and tell them you want to join because they are fantastic people to work with. Um, And yeah, and if you want more from us specifically, check us out on MOCBoxing.com. We'd be happy to have you come and take a look and to get some of your feedback as we grow. That's all for me. Thanks for coming.